As of 2016, Nick had gone to rehab 18 times. And that means that in 7 years, he went to rehab 18 times.
Rob Reiner's inner circle has finally spoken about why his son reached a breaking point. But before that truth lands, you have to understand the world that shaped one of Hollywood's most intense legends. Robert De Niro was born Robert Anthony De Niro on August 17, 1943, in Manhattan, New York City. Art wasn't something he found later.
It's an extraordinary financial expense. It may make life easier in some ways, but it doesn't necessarily make life better.
It surrounded him from day one. His parents, Virginia Admiral and Robert De Niro Sr., weren't casual creatives. They were serious painters, deeply embedded in New York's art scene. De Niro grew up watching discipline, obsession, sacrifice, and emotional struggle play out daily. Not on a canvas, but in real life. Even after his parents split while he was young, the atmosphere never softened. The home stayed bohemian, intellectually sharp, and emotionally demanding. That environment shaped his worldview early. It trained his eye to notice tension, silence, and inner conflict long before he ever stepped on a film set.
So when you think about a family here who was trying everything over the course of a decade plus, I mean, you're putting a lot of effort into dealing with this relationship, and for it to end so tragically and violently is very upsetting.
Growing up in Manhattan's Little Italy sharpened that edge even more. De Niro absorbed the raw street rhythm, the body language, side glances, and coded conversations that couldn't be faked. Years later, those same mannerisms would explode on screen with frightening authenticity. By his teenage years, De Niro wasn't experimenting. He was locked in. Acting wasn't a phase, it was the mission. He enrolled in elite acting programs across New York and trained like survival depended on it. He studied under Stella Adler, who drilled emotional truth and psychological depth into her students. This wasn't about memorizing lines. It was about understanding why a character breathes the way they do. Then came Lee Strasberg and the Actors Studio, where method acting became a full-contact mental discipline. Those years created the De Niro formula the world would come to fear and admire. Total immersion, extreme preparation, zero shortcuts. If he played it, he lived it. Period. His early roles in the late 60s and early 70s were small, but the warning signs were already there. The intensity simmered just beneath the surface. Then came the partnership that rewired cinema itself. When De Niro teamed up with Martin Scorsese for Mean Streets in 1973, everything changed. The film was gritty, semi-autobiographical, and dangerously real. De Niro's performance didn't feel acted. It felt volatile, unpredictable, alive. That role announced a new kind of actor, one who could channel real human instability without sanding down the edges. His rise accelerated with The Godfather Part II in 1974. Playing young Vito Corleone was a massive risk. He barely spoke English on screen, relying on silence, posture, and micro-expressions. The result was surgical, controlled, and powerful. That performance earned De Niro his first Academy Award and confirmed he wasn't just talented, he was dangerous in the best way. But what truly separated De Niro from everyone else was his obsession with authenticity. He didn't pretend to become characters, he dissolved into them. For Taxi Driver in 1976, he didn't research from a distance. He got a real taxi license and drove New York streets for months. The loneliness, the anger, the quiet madness, all of it soaked in. That infamous "you talking to me" moment wasn't scripted. It was raw instinct caught on film, and it became a cultural scar. By the time Raging Bull arrived in 1980, his dedication had reached mythic levels. To play Jake LaMotta, De Niro trained as a real boxer, then gained over 60 pounds to show the character's collapse. The transformation was brutal, physical, emotional, and unforgettable. That role earned Robert De Niro his second Academy Award, and locked in his legacy as an actor willing to sacrifice everything for truth. Throughout the 80s and 90s, he stacked classic after classic. The King of Comedy, Once Upon a Time in America, Brazil, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino. Each performance revealed another layer of danger, discipline, and control. In Goodfellas, his Jimmy Conway wasn't loud or flashy. He was calm and calculating. It proved something terrifying. Real danger doesn't need to shout. De Niro understood power at its quietest level. Then came the twist no one saw coming. In the late 90s and early 2000s, De Niro leaned into comedy and crushed that too. Films like Analyze This, Meet the Parents, and The Intern flipped everything audiences thought they knew about him. Instead of menace and silence, viewers saw timing, self-awareness, and razor-sharp humor. It proved a hard truth. Only an actor with real authority can mock his own legend and stay untouchable. These weren't accidents or lazy choices. They were confidence at the highest level. De Niro knew exactly who he was on screen and wasn't afraid to play with that image. But his impact didn't stop when the cameras cut. Off-screen, he became a serious force as a producer, director, and cultural power player. After the September 11th attacks, De Niro co-founded the Tribeca Film Festival to help revive Lower Manhattan. This wasn't branding, it was commitment. Tribeca became a lifeline for the neighborhood and a launchpad for bold, independent voices. As a director, De Niro stayed grounded and personal. A Bronx Tale wasn't flashy, it was honest. Drawn from his own upbringing, it explored loyalty, temptation, and the quiet choices that shape lives forever. He wasn't chasing spectacle, he was chasing truth. Even as the years stacked up, De Niro never faded into the background. Performances in Silver Linings Playbook, The Irishman, and Killers of the Flower Moon showed an artist willing to face aging, regret, and history head-on. The Irishman hit especially hard. Using digital de-aging, De Niro returned to the criminal world that defined his early career. But this time, there was no swagger, only reflection, loss, and the heavy cost of moral shortcuts. Off-screen, De Niro's personal life unfolded in chapters just as layered as his films, marked by reinvention, responsibility, and deep loyalty to family. In 1976, he married actress and singer Diane Abbott during the most explosive rise of his career. That same period welcomed his son, Raphael De Niro. Unlike his father, Raphael chose real estate over acting, carving his own path while staying loosely connected to film. De Niro's sense of family ran deeper. He adopted Abbott's daughter, Drina De Niro, not as a gesture, but as a permanent commitment. Drina later explored acting and filmmaking, often crediting De Niro as a steady protector in her life. Even when the marriage ended in 1988, De Niro didn't disappear. He stayed present, involved, and responsible. By the mid-1990s, his life shifted again. In 1995, he welcomed twin sons, Julian and Aaron, through surrogacy, entering a new phase of fatherhood later in life. In 1997, De Niro married Grace Hightower. Together, they welcomed their son Elliot in 1998. De Niro later spoke publicly about Elliot's autism, using his platform to push awareness and understanding forward. Though De Niro and Hightower later separated, their story didn't simply end there, and that next chapter would prove just as complex. They reconciled and renewed their vows in 2004. That choice revealed something deeply personal about Robert De Niro, a belief in second chances, emotional endurance, and rebuilding even after serious fractures. Their family grew again in 2011 with the birth of their daughter, Helen Grace De Niro, via surrogate. Becoming a father again in his late 60s didn't slow him down. It sharpened him. He embraced the role with the same seriousness that defined every stage of his parenting journey. De Niro has spoken openly about how fatherhood continued to reshape him. It brought perspective. It forced humility. and it gave him purpose far beyond awards, acclaim, or legacy on screen. Taken together, these chapters paint a portrait of a man whose private life was just as layered as his public image. Through marriages, separations, reconciliations, and the challenge of raising children across decades, De Niro showed that family, however complex, always remained at his core. Then came the silence that shook Hollywood. After the horrific discovery at Rob Reiner's Brentwood home, shock rippled far beyond Los Angeles. Friends and collaborators struggled to reconcile the gentle man they knew with the brutal reality now tied to his name. Among those most deeply affected was Robert De Niro, a close friend of Reiner's for decades. When he finally spoke, he did so with rare emotional openness. "This wasn't sudden," he said quietly. "People want a single moment, a single trigger. That's not how these things work." He explained that tragedies like this build over time. They fracture, they erode. By December 14th, 2025, the damage was already done. The day shattered a family and stunned the industry, but to those who sensed the strain, it didn't feel sudden. When Roy Reiner arrived at the Brentwood home after learning her parents had missed a routine massage appointment, she expected confusion, not catastrophe. What she found would haunt her forever. She discovered her father's body and fled in terror, only later learning of her mother's fate. In one moment, Roy became an unwilling witness to years of unresolved tension coming to a devastating end. De Niro spoke softly about that weight. "That's something no child should ever have to see," he said. "That image doesn't leave you. It becomes part of you." As investigators pieced together the timeline, attention turned to Nick Reiner, who had been living with his parents. Friends later recalled he had grown increasingly volatile in the months leading up to the tragedy, a pressure building quietly, long before it finally exploded. De Niro was careful not to excuse what came next, but he spoke honestly about what he believed had been ignored for too long. "There was pain," he said. "Deep pain. And pain that goes untreated doesn't disappear. It turns inward or explodes outward." One moment that later haunted everyone was a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien the night before the killings. Witnesses described Nick as agitated, disruptive, and visibly unsteady. When Rob confronted his son about his behavior, the argument grew loud and tense enough to stop conversations around the room. De Niro watched it unfold with rising concern. He later said that moment represented something far bigger than a father correcting a son. "That wasn't discipline," he explained. "That was years of pressure colliding in public. And once something like that erupts, it can't be sealed back up." After Roy contacted authorities, her next call revealed just how tight Rob Reiner's inner circle truly was. She reached out to Billy Crystal, and he rushed to the house immediately with his wife, no hesitation at all. That urgency said everything. Reiner wasn't just respected, he was deeply loved. De Niro later described Crystal's reaction as pure heartbreak. "We all felt like we failed him somehow," he admitted. "You look back and ask what signs we explained away, because it was easier than facing them." Nick's arrest later that day marked the legal beginning of a tragedy that had been building emotionally for years. De Niro chose his words carefully, refusing to sensationalize the violence. "This isn't a story about fame or Hollywood," he said. "It's about a family. It's about mental health. It's about what happens when love and fear live in the same space for too long." In the days that followed, De Niro urged compassion, but not denial. Understanding, but not excuses. "You can mourn the victims and still ask how things reached this point," he said. "If we don't ask that question, we're just waiting for it to happen again." For De Niro, losing Rob Reiner wasn't just losing a friend. It was a painful reminder that even lives filled with laughter and success can hide unbearable strain. "We tell ourselves strong people will ask for help," he said quietly. Sometimes they don't, and sometimes when they do, it's already too late. Now that you know the full story, what part of this tragedy stayed with you the most? Were the warning signs there all along? Or was this truly unavoidable? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, pass it on to someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more untold stories.